Lies have a peculiar weight in the vastness of space. They travel slower than light, but faster than truth, spreading from system to system, embedding themselves in the consciousness of civilizations until they become indistinguishable from reality. I have lived for 3,000 years, and in that time I have learned that the most dangerous lies are not the ones we tell others. They are the ones we tell ourselves, the comfortable deceptions that let us sleep peacefully while the universe arranges our destruction. My name is Threneth Voss, and I was the architect of certainties for the covenant of eternal stars, the ancient alliance of 17 elder species that had governed this galaxy for 40,000 years. My role was to assess threats, to calculate probabilities, to ensure that the covenant was never surprised by anything the universe might produce. I was very good at my role. I was never wrong. Until humanity, until the lie we told ourselves about their weakness brought everything we had built crashing down around us. I remember the first reports about Earth, a small blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star in the outer spiral arm, far from the great centers of galactic civilization. The surveys described a species of soft, fragile creatures with inadequate natural defenses, short lifespans, and a troubling tendency towards self-destruction. They had developed primitive technology, but their constant internal conflicts suggested they would exterminate themselves long before achieving meaningful spacefaring capability. Weak, the assessment concluded. Biologically inferior. No threat assessment required. I approved that assessment personally. I reviewed the data, analyzed the projections, and certified humanity as irrelevant to Covenant interests. They were fragile, aggressive, divided, short-lived, everything that ancient civilizations were not. They would burn themselves out within a few centuries, as countless other young species had done before them. The Covenant filed the report and forgot about Earth. That was 400 years ago. The galaxy would pay for that assessment in blood and fire, and the death of worlds. I am recording this account from the observation deck of a human vessel, a ship called the Remembrance, which seems an appropriate name given the circumstances. Through the viewport, I can see the shattered remains of what was once the Covenant's proudest achievement, the Celestial Throne, a station the size of a small moon that had served as our seat of government for 20,000 years. It is debris now, cold, silent, tumbling through the void. And the humans who saved what remained of my people are treating me with a kindness I do not deserve, a patience that makes no sense given everything the Covenant did to them. But I am getting ahead of myself. To understand the price the galaxy paid, you must first understand the lie. How it began, how it spread, and how the species we dismissed as weak proved to be something far more terrifying than anything we had imagined. The lie began with biology. Humans are, by objective measurement, one of the most fragile sentient species ever catalogued. They have no natural armor, no venom, no claws worth mentioning. Their senses are mediocre at best, limited visual range, poor hearing compared to most species, negligible olfactory capability. They cannot survive in vacuum, cannot tolerate significant radiation, cannot regenerate lost limbs. A fall from modest height can kill them. Temperature variations that most species barely notice can render them incapacitated or dead. Their lifespans are laughably brief,
A human who reaches 100 years is considered exceptionally old, while the youngest member of the Covenant's ruling council had lived for 12,000 years. They reproduce slowly, mature slowly, and die with distressing frequency from ailments that elder species eliminated from their populations millennia ago.
By every metric the Covenant used to assess species potential, humanity should have been insignificant. The first hint that our metrics were flawed came 60 years ago, when humanity achieved faster-than-light travel. This was not supposed to happen. Our projections, my projections, had given them less than a 12% chance of surviving long enough to develop interstellar capability. Their internal conflicts should have intensified as resources grew scarce. Their weapons should have become too powerful for their limited wisdom to control. They should have destroyed themselves, as so many young species do. Instead, they reached the stars. The Covenant convened an emergency session to discuss the implications. I was there, as I always was, providing analysis and recommendations. The debate was heated. Some argued for immediate intervention, reasoning that humanity's aggressive nature made them a potential threat that should be addressed before they grew stronger. Others advocated for observation, suggesting that humanity's expansion would likely trigger internal conflicts that would accomplish the same result without Covenant involvement. A small minority, silenced quickly, suggested that perhaps we should attempt communication. Perhaps humanity had something to offer. The majority chose a fourth option: containment. We would not destroy humanity. Such actions against a spacefaring species required extensive justification under Covenant law. We would not communicate with them. What could a species so young and primitive possibly have to say that was worth hearing? We would simply ensure that they remained in their designated region of space, unable to interfere with Covenant affairs or access resources we deemed important. The containment was implemented through a series of subtle measures. Trade routes were redirected away from human space. Resources in nearby systems were quietly claimed by Covenant members before humans could reach them. Any species that showed interest in contacting humanity was discouraged. When humanity attempted to establish diplomatic relations, their envoys were received politely and sent home with vague promises of future consideration. When they petitioned for membership in the Galactic community, their applications were lost in bureaucratic processes designed to delay indefinitely. And when humanity asked why they were being excluded, the Covenant's official response was silence. We told ourselves this was prudent. We told ourselves this was protecting the galaxy from a potentially dangerous species. We told ourselves that humanity, with their brief lives and violent history, could not possibly understand the responsibilities of galactic citizenship. We told ourselves they were weak, and that the weak did not deserve a voice. For 40 years, the containment held. Humanity remained in their small corner of space, building their modest civilization, causing no significant problems. Occasionally, they would probe the boundaries we had established, sending exploration vessels into restricted zones, but these incursions were minor and easily managed. The Covenant congratulated itself on handling the human situation elegantly. No violence had been necessary. No resources had been wasted. The primitive species had been contained, and the galaxy continued its ancient patterns undisturbed. Then the devouring came. We did not see it at first. The initial attacks occurred in the outer reaches, remote research stations, minor outposts, places that could fall silent for decades without anyone noticing. By the time we understood what was happening, 16 systems had been consumed. Consumed is the precise word. Not conquered, not destroyed, consumed. The devouring did not want our territory or our resources or our submission. It wanted our matter. It converted everything it touched, planets, ships, stations, people, into more of itself, growing exponentially as it spread.
The Covenant's response was swift and confident. We had faced threats before. We had fleets that could darken the skies of 100 worlds. We had weapons that could crack planets and extinguish stars. We had 40,000 years of accumulated military knowledge and technology. The devouring consumed our fleets as easily as it consumed our worlds. Every weapon we deployed was absorbed and analyzed. Every strategy we implemented was adapted to and countered. Every defensive line we established was breached within days. The devouring learned from each engagement, evolved in response to each attack, became stronger with every victory. Within 2 years, a third of Covenant space was gone. 3 elder species, civilizations that had endured for 20,000 years or more, were extinct. Trillions of sentient beings had been converted to gray, churning machinery.
And the devouring was accelerating. I remember the session when the High Council finally acknowledged what we all knew, but none wanted to say. We were losing. Not struggling, not facing setbacks, not experiencing temporary difficulties. Losing. The greatest alliance in galactic history, the accumulated wisdom and power of 17 ancient civilizations, was being systematically annihilated by a threat we could not understand, could not communicate with, could not stop. "We must consider all options," the speaker intoned, his voice heavy with exhaustion and fear, "including options we have previously rejected."
You mean the younger species, Councillor Wren said. The ones we have contained. We need every resource available, every fleet, every world, every warrior. The containment policies must be suspended.
And humanity? The chamber fell silent. We all knew what humanity represented. Not just another species to be recruited, but a reminder of our arrogance. We had dismissed them as weak, contained them as irrelevant, denied them any role in galactic affairs. Now we were desperate enough to ask for their help.
They are unpredictable, I offered, choosing my words carefully. Their response to our overture cannot be reliably calculated. They may refuse. They may demand concessions we cannot accept. They may use this crisis to advance their own interests at our expense.
Or they may simply attack us, Councillor Wren added. 40 years of containment must have generated significant resentment. This could be the opportunity they have been waiting for. The Covenant weakened, distracted, unable to maintain the barriers that have kept them confined.
We have no choice, the speaker said. Calculate the risks as you will, architect. The alternative is extinction. Send the message.
The message was sent, a formal communication to Earth's unified government, acknowledging humanity's existence for the first time in 4 decades, explaining the threat the galaxy faced, and requesting, not demanding, not commanding, but requesting their assistance.
We expected anger. We expected recrimination. We expected demands for apology, for compensation, for revenge against those who had imprisoned them. Instead, we received a response that consisted of only 12 words. Send us everything you have on the enemy. We're on our way.
I stared at that message for hours, trying to understand it. No conditions. No negotiations, no acknowledgement of the decades of mistreatment, Just a simple, immediate commitment to help those who had wronged them.
It made no sense.
The first human vessels arrived at the Covenant's emergency command station 3 weeks later. I was there to observe, to assess, to provide the Council with an evaluation of humanity's potential contribution to our defense.
What I saw confused me. The human ships were unimpressive, smaller than equivalent Covenant vessels, lacking the elegant lines and gleaming surfaces that characterized advanced civilizations. They looked functional, practical, almost crude, vessels designed for utility rather than beauty.
The humans themselves were equally underwhelming at first glance. No impressive physical presence, no obvious technological enhancements, no aura of ancient wisdom. They moved through our station in simple uniforms, speaking quietly among themselves, observing everything with expressions I could not read.
Commander Sarah Chen was their senior representative, a woman of medium height with dark hair and calm eyes that seemed to absorb information without revealing anything in return. She requested access to our tactical databases, our sensor logs, our analysis of the devouring's behavior. Her manner was polite but direct, without the elaborate formalities that Covenant diplomacy typically required.
"We need to understand what we're dealing with," she explained when I questioned the scope of her requests. "Patterns, behaviors, anything that might indicate vulnerabilities." "Our analysts have studied the devouring extensively," I said, allowing perhaps too much condescension into my voice. "We have not identified any exploitable weaknesses. That is why we are losing." Commander Chen looked at me for a long moment. Her expression did not change, but something in her eyes shifted, a flicker of something I could not identify. "Your analysts are looking at the problem wrong," she said. "I beg your pardon?" "You're treating the devouring as an enemy to be defeated through superior force, looking for ways to outgun it, outmaneuver it, overwhelm it with technology and numbers. That approach hasn't worked because the devouring adapts to direct confrontation. It absorbs your strength and makes it its own." "Then what approach do you suggest? Surrender? Negotiation with something that cannot be communicated with?" Commander Chen smiled slightly. It was not a warm expression. "We suggest approaching it as what it actually is, a system. Complex, yes. Adaptive, certainly, but still a system, with inputs and outputs, with processes that can be understood, with behaviors that emerge from underlying rules. Find the rules, and you find the vulnerabilities."
The Covenant's finest minds have spent 2 years.
The Covenant's finest minds have spent 40,000 years believing they understand everything worth understanding. That kind of certainty creates blind spots. She paused. We have no such certainty. We've spent our entire existence knowing that we don't understand, that we might be wrong, that the universe might destroy us at any moment. That fear keeps us looking for answers in places you've never thought to search. I should have been offended. I should have dismissed her words as the arrogance of a primitive species that did not understand its place. Instead, I found myself troubled by a question I could not answer.
What if she was right?
Over the following weeks, I observed the humans as they worked. Their methods were unlike anything I had seen in 3,000 years of studying galactic civilizations.
They did not rely on formal hierarchies or established procedures. Instead, they formed flexible teams that shifted and reformed based on the needs of each problem. Specialists from different fields collaborated freely, sharing ideas without regard for rank or seniority. Mistakes were treated not as failures to be punished, but as data points to be analyzed.
And they questioned everything. Every assumption the Covenant had made about the devouring was examined, tested, challenged. Why did it expand in certain patterns? What determined which targets it prioritized? How did it process the information it absorbed? What happened at the boundaries of its territory, in the spaces where it was still consolidating rather than expanding?
I watched a human scientist, Dr. James Okafor, a specialist in what they called complex systems theory, argue with Commander Chen for 3 hours about a minor discrepancy in the devouring's behavior patterns. He was subordinate to her in their hierarchy, yet she listened to his objections with genuine attention, adjusting her own theories based on his input.
"Does this not undermine your authority?" I asked her afterward.
She looked at me with that calm, assessing gaze. Authority isn't about being right. It's about making sure the right answer gets found. If James is right and I'm wrong, his truth doesn't threaten my authority. It strengthens our chances of survival.
And if he is wrong? Then we've ruled out one more possibility. That's progress.
I did not understand. Among the Covenant, admitting uncertainty was weakness. Changing one's position based on a subordinate's input was a sign of inadequate conviction. The hierarchy existed precisely to ensure that established wisdom prevailed over untested ideas. But the Covenant was losing, and humanity was not.
Perhaps there was something to learn from their strange methods after all.
The breakthrough came 43 days after humanity's arrival. Dr. Okafor had been analyzing the devouring's expansion patterns, looking for anomalies that might indicate underlying behavioral rules. He found something no Covenant analyst had noticed. The devouring paused.
"It's learning," Dr. Okafor explained to the assembled command staff, human and Covenant alike. "Constantly, continuously learning. That's how it adapts so quickly to our attacks. It absorbs information along with matter, integrating new knowledge into its behavioral matrix. But learning takes time, infinitesimal amounts, but time nonetheless."
"How does this help us?" Counselor Vren asked impatiently. "If it can learn to counter any attack, what difference does a moment's hesitation make?" "It makes all the difference," Commander Chen said. "Because if we give it enough new information, truly new, genuinely unprecedented, we can overload that learning process, force it to spend more time processing than acting, create windows of vulnerability."
Commander Chen smiled that unsettling smile again. "That's the beauty of it. You've been fighting the devouring with your most advanced technology. Predictable, based on principles it has already absorbed, variations on themes it has already learned to counter. We're going to fight it with something it has never encountered."
"Which is chaos." I did not understand what she meant. Neither did the Covenant representatives. But humanity began implementing their plan with a speed and coordination that was, in retrospect, the first real sign of what they were capable of. More human ships arrived, not a few dozen as we had initially expected, but thousands. They emerged from human space in waves, far more than our intelligence had suggested humanity possessed. Some were military vessels, but many were not. Converted freighters, modified research ships, even civilian craft that had been hastily armed. "Where did these come from?" I asked Commander Chen as we watched the fleet assemble. Our assessments indicated humanity had perhaps 200 combat-capable vessels. "Your assessments were based on what we allowed you to see," she replied. "We knew we were being watched. We knew we were being contained. So we built in secret, in asteroid fields, in hidden stations, in places your surveillance never thought to look."
"You were preparing for war with the Covenant?"
"We were preparing for survival.
The specific threat didn't matter. We knew something would come eventually. Something always does. She paused, watching the ships maneuver into formation. Your containment was more effective than you realized, Architect. It taught us that the galaxy was hostile, that we could rely only on ourselves, that every moment of peace was just time to prepare for the next crisis.
We made you stronger, I said slowly, the realization settling over me like a weight. You made us paranoid. Paranoid species build hidden fleets. Paranoid species develop contingency plans for threats that haven't materialized yet. Paranoid species survive. The human strategy against the devouring was unlike anything the Covenant had ever attempted, because it was unlike anything the Covenant could have conceived. Instead of facing the devouring with unified, coordinated forces, humanity deployed chaos. Their ships attacked in seemingly random patterns, using weapons and tactics that changed constantly, never repeating the same approach twice. Some vessels used energy weapons, others projectiles, others deployed materials that reacted in unpredictable ways when consumed. Every ship carried different technology. Every squadron used different tactics. Every wave of attack presented the devouring with new information to process, new patterns to analyze, new adaptations to develop. And humanity did not stop. For 72 hours straight, they maintained the assault, not to destroy the devouring, but to overwhelm its processing capacity. Wave after wave of controlled chaos, forcing the entity to dedicate more and more of its resources to learning, leaving less and less for expansion. The devouring's advance slowed. For the first time in 2 years, it stopped gaining ground. And then humanity revealed their true weapon. I was on the command deck when the signal came through, a priority communication from humanity's central command, a location they had never disclosed to us. Commander Chen accepted the message without expression, listened for approximately 30 seconds, and then turned to face the assembled Covenant representatives. "Which is?" Counselor Vren demanded. "Injection." On the tactical display, a new element appeared, a single vessel, larger than any human ship I had yet seen, emerging from a fold in space at the very edge of the devouring's territory. "The Prometheus," Commander Chen said, "our largest mobile research platform, modified for this specific mission. It carries a payload designed by our best theoretical physicists, a self-propagating information virus that will, if successfully injected into the devouring's core, cause catastrophic recursive conflicts in its learning architecture." "You're going to give it something it cannot learn," I said, understanding finally dawning. "We're going to give it a paradox, information that cannot be processed, that creates infinite loops, that turns its greatest strength, its ability to learn and adapt, into its destruction." She paused. "The chaos strategy bought us time and created the opening. The Prometheus carries the killing blow." "And if it fails?" "Then the devouring absorbs our best weapon and becomes even more dangerous. But it won't fail." "How can you be certain?" Commander Chen looked at me with those calm, terrible eyes. "Because we don't do certainty, Architect. We do necessity. This works because it has to work, because the alternative is extinction, because we have no other options. That's how humans have always operated, not from confidence, but from desperation. The certainty you mistook for weakness is actually the absence of the luxury of doubt." I watched as the Prometheus approached the devouring. Around it, Human vessels died by the hundreds, sacrificing themselves to keep the chaos pattern active, to prevent the devouring from focusing on the approaching weapon platform, to buy time with their lives.
They knew they were going to die. They did it anyway. That was when I truly understood what human weakness meant. It meant they had no natural defenses, so they built artificial ones. It meant they had short lives, so they used them without hesitation. It meant they faced death constantly, so they had learned to function in its presence without breaking.
The Covenant's strength was the product of 40,000 years of accumulated advantage, technology, resources, knowledge, power built up over millennia of relative safety. We had never truly been tested, never faced annihilation, never learned what we were capable of when everything was at stake. Humanity's strength was forged in the opposite crucible. They had always been dying. They had always been on the edge of extinction. They had never had the luxury of safety, never known a moment when the universe wasn't trying to destroy them.
And they had survived anyway.
The Prometheus reached the devouring's core.
The injection took less than a second, a burst of paradoxical information delivered directly into the heart of the entity that had consumed a third of the galaxy. The effect was immediate and catastrophic.
The devouring screamed. I do not know how else to describe it. Every sensor in the region registered the same phenomenon, a wave of chaotic energy radiating outward from the core as the entity's learning architecture tried and failed to process the impossible information it had received.
For 3 days, the devouring convulsed. Its expansion reversed. Its consumed matter began to destabilize. The gray machinery that had replaced worlds and civilizations broke down into component elements, releasing energy in cascading waves. By the 4th day, the devouring was gone, not defeated, dissolved, reduced to scattered debris and fading radiation. Humanity had done what the Covenant could not. They had destroyed the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced. The cost was staggering. 3,000 human vessels lost, over 100,000 human lives, brief, fragile human lives, each one precious. Each one sacrificed willingly for a galaxy that had treated humanity with nothing but contempt. In the aftermath, there were no celebrations, no triumphant declarations. The human survivors simply began the work of stabilizing the affected regions, providing relief to Covenant worlds devastated by the devouring's advance, helping species that had dismissed them as weak and primitive. I asked Commander Chen why. Why help those who had wronged them? Why sacrifice for those who had never acknowledged their worth?
She was quiet for a long moment before answering.
"Because this is who we are," she said finally. "Not because you deserve it, not because we expect gratitude, because helping is what we do when people are suffering, regardless of whether they helped us when we were suffering. That's the difference between strength and power, Architect. Power is the ability to harm those who have harmed you. Strength is the ability to help them instead."
We called you weak.
You were wrong.
Yes, we were wrong.
I have spent the months since the devouring's defeat reviewing everything I thought I knew about humanity. Every assessment, every analysis, every confident conclusion I had drawn from incomplete data and comfortable assumptions.
They were all wrong.
The lie we told ourselves, that humans were weak, that their fragility and short lives made them inferior, that their internal conflicts proved their instability, was not just inaccurate, it was precisely backwards.
Humans are not weak despite their fragility. They are strong because of it. Every challenge they face, from their hostile homeworld to their violent history to the containment we imposed, has forced them to adapt, to innovate, to find new ways to survive. They have been refined by struggle in ways that ancient civilizations, comfortable in our accumulated strength, never were. The galaxy paid for the lie we told ourselves. Trillions of lives lost, civilizations extinguished, a third of known space consumed, all because we were too arrogant to see the truth standing right in front of us.
The Covenant is rebuilding now, what remains of us at least. 6 of the 17 founding species survive, scattered across the regions the devouring did not reach. We are accepting human guidance in the reconstruction, human technology in our defense networks, human counsel in our governance.
It is humbling. It should be.
Commander Chen visited me yesterday as I was completing this account. She looked tired. They all looked tired, these humans who saved us, but she moved with the same quiet purpose I had observed from the beginning.
The Council is formally requesting that humanity join us as an equal partner in galactic governance, I told her. Not as a provisional member, not as an observer, as a full founding species of the new covenant. It is the least we can offer, given everything humanity has sacrificed.
She considered this for a moment. We'll consider it, but not for the reasons you think.
What do you mean?
We're not interested in power, Architect. We're not interested in finally taking our rightful place in galactic affairs or proving that we deserve respect. We're interested in making sure that what happened with the devouring never happens again. Not to us, not to you, not to anyone.
And joining the Covenant would help accomplish that?
Maybe. Or maybe the Covenant's structure is part of the problem. Too rigid, too hierarchical, too certain of its own wisdom. Maybe what the galaxy needs isn't a rebuilt version of the old order, but something new. Something that learns from mistakes instead of enshrining them. Something that treats every species as valuable, regardless of age or technology or apparent strength.
You would rebuild galactic civilization from the ground up?
Commander Chen smiled, a different smile than I had seen before, warmer somehow, more genuine. We've done it before. Earth was devastated dozens of times throughout human history. We always rebuilt. That's what humans do. We take what's broken and we fix it, not because we're strong, but because we refuse to accept that broken is the end of the story.
I thought about her words long after she left. I thought about the lie we had told ourselves, that weakness was a fixed quality, that species could be assessed and categorized and dismissed based on a list of physical characteristics, that the universe rewarded the strong and eliminated the weak.
The universe does not reward strength. The universe does not care about strength.
The universe rewards those who refuse to stop, those who adapt, those who look at impossible odds and find a way forward anyway. The galaxy called humans weak. The galaxy paid for that lie, in blood, in fire, in the death of worlds and the extinction of species. The galaxy paid because it believed its own arrogance, its own certainty, its own comfortable conviction that it understood everything worth understanding. And now the galaxy is learning what humanity has always known, that weakness is not the opposite of strength. Weakness is the teacher that strength never had. Weakness is the crucible that forges those who survive it into something the strong can never become.
I am old now, 3,000 years of certainty, shattered by a species younger than some of our buildings. 3,000 years of careful analysis, proven worthless by those we dismissed as primitive.
I am learning to be uncertain. I am learning to question. I am learning from humans what it means to face the universe without the comfortable armor of assumed superiority.
It is humbling.
It should be. The galaxy paid for the lie. But perhaps, if we can learn from our payment, if we can embrace the uncertainty that humanity has always lived with, perhaps the payment was not entirely in vain.
Perhaps, in the end, the lie we told about human weakness taught us more about our own weakness than anything else ever could. I record this account for posterity. Let it stand as testimony, not to humanity's triumph, but to the Covenant's failure. Let it remind future generations what certainty costs, what arrogance destroys, what assumptions can never be safely made about any species, no matter how weak they appear. They called humans weak. The galaxy paid for that lie. And in pain, we finally learned the truth, that weakness and strength are not what they appear, that the fragile can overcome the mighty, that those who have nothing to lose can defeat those who have everything. Watch us. The galaxy watched. The galaxy learned. And the galaxy will never make the mistake of dismissing humanity again. Not because we fear them, because we finally understand them. And understanding, I have learned, is the beginning of wisdom. The wisdom we claimed to have, the wisdom humanity taught us we lacked, the wisdom that might yet save us all from the next threat the universe sends our way. They called humans weak. The galaxy paid for that lie. We will not make that mistake again.